Hollywood loves comebacks. You've got John Travolta bouncing back in Pulp Fiction, Robert Downey Jr. becoming Iron Man after all the trouble he had, Demi Moore getting her Oscar nomination with The Substance. People love seeing someone prove everybody wrong. But here's the thing. Not every comeback works out. Actually, most of them don't. For every Robert Downey Jr., there's somebody who thinks they've got the perfect comeback lined up. This one movie that'll put them right back at the top, and then it just totally bombs. We've got actors who disappeared for years, only to come back with some Netflix crap nobody remembers. We've got former stars who managed to screw up their comeback so badly, it basically ended their careers all over again. So that's what we're talking about today. 10 comeback movies that Hollywood stars probably wish never happened. Let's get into it. So, in 2024, we got something nobody really expected. Kevin Spacey back starring in a movie. He'd been out of the game completely since 2018 after all those allegations and legal issues piled up. Nobody was touching this guy. Obviously, this wasn't some big studio movie. It was an indie production privately funded, but still kinda surprising anyone would put him in anything at all at this point. The movie's basically a thriller about a woman who's an alcoholic real estate agent, and she starts noticing this mysterious guy following her everywhere. Spacey moves in across the street and starts digging up her secrets for some shadowy boss. Sounds like it might be interesting, right? Well, nobody thought so. Nobody watched it. Barely any critics covered it. I'm not even sure it actually played theaters in the US. Internationally, it pulled in about 62,000. And that's not exactly a comeback. And the director, Michael Zako Hall, he tried defending Spacey, said something like Kevin Spacey isn't Harvey Weinstein, he's got talent, this is cancel culture. Yeah, whatever. But talent or not, 62 grand isn't going to bring anyone's career back. Alright, let's talk Mel Gibson. Back in 2010, he starred in Edge of Darkness, his first lead role in a big studio film since Signs in 2002. Looked pretty promising, honestly. It was a remake of this classic British show from the 80s, directed by Martin Campbell, the same guy who did the original. Gibson back in tough guy revenge mode. But it didn't really work. Reviews were kinda average. Audiences didn't show up much. After Gibson's whole meltdown back in the mid-2000s, with all those headlines about his rants and behavior, people just weren't ready to welcome him back with open arms. Since then, he's never really gotten back to where he was. Sure, Hacksaw Ridge won a couple Oscars in 2016, and everyone thought maybe he's back. But no. Lately, he's mostly doing these straight-to-streaming movies you've probably never heard of and don't want to watch anyway. "2013 was the big Arnold comeback after he'd spent almost a decade as governor of California. He hadn't done a real movie since Terminator 3 back in 2003. So yeah, expectations were pretty high when they announced The Last Stand. On paper it sounded great, a throwback, violent action movie kind of like those John Carpenter films from the 80s. Directed by Kim Ji-woon, who did I Saw the Devil, which is crazy and amazing. Seemed like exactly the right kind of B-movie fun to bring Arnold back. But the movie itself didn't really deliver. I mean, parts of it are cool, you get some action, but the tone was all over the place. Just kind of a mess. And hardly anyone saw it anyway. That might have been the moment we realized Arnold's glory days were pretty much done. He kept making movies after this, but none of them ever came close to feeling as big or important as his classics from the 80s and 90s. Michael Caton Jones, who directed this, straight up said he was totally broke at the time, basically desperate, and ended up taking this movie because nobody else wanted it. Basic Instinct 2 was this poisoned chalice that had been passed around, and eventually, it arrived at my door. In the mid-2000s, Sharon Stone really needed a hit. Her last big movie was Casino in 1995, and everything she'd done since had pretty much bombed, including Catwoman, which itself was supposed to be her comeback. So she tried going back to her biggest role. But by 2006, Stone was pushing 50. Michael Douglas wasn't around this time, and instead, they paired her with some British TV actor named David Morrissey, and even Stan Collymore, the soccer guy. And the movie bombed badly. It cost around $70 million and didn't even make $40 million back. Just a disaster all around. Everybody involved probably wishes they could erase this one from history. Honey Boy was supposed to be Shia LaBeouf's big redemption movie. By 2019, he'd been in trouble constantly. Rehab, personal issues, scandals, the whole deal. But this was the movie he wrote himself while he was in rehab, and it was about his own childhood and relationship with his dad. Pretty personal stuff. Critics loved it. Same year, he did The Peanut Butter Falcon, which people also loved. For a second there, it looked like Shia was officially back. But no. Over the next couple years, everything blew up again. He picked some really questionable movies, got into more trouble, and then his ex-girlfriend accused him of domestic abuse. Suddenly, nobody wanted anything to do with Shia again. Then in 2022, Shia admitted something pretty messed up, that Honey Boy wasn't even really true. He had basically made up most of the stuff about his dad being abusive. Even called his dad after the movie came out and admitted he'd taken creative liberties and messed things up pretty bad. So that big comeback totally blew up in his face. Again. Between around 2007 and 2019, Eddie Murphy movies were pretty terrible. You had Norbit, Meet Dave, imagine that. I mean, movie after movie after movie, total disasters. Eddie Murphy went from top of the world to bottom of the barrel, and he knew it. But then, out of nowhere, he made Dolomite Is My Name in 2019. People loved it. Critics went nuts. And when they said he was going to follow it up with a sequel to Coming to America, one of his best movies ever, people were actually excited. But man, that sequel sucked, and it sucked hard. One critic called it startling in its incompetence. And after that, Murphy just went right back to making really forgettable stuff, streaming movies like You People and Candy Cane Lane. Basically, that big Eddie Murphy comeback we were all waiting for didn't happen. Mickey Rourke's career is basically one giant roller coaster ride. Dude's had more comebacks and meltdowns than pretty much anybody. He spent the whole 90s just burning every bridge he could find. Plus, he was off boxing, like real boxing, professionally, 8 matches in 3 years. But in the early 2000s, he started popping up again in stuff like Man on Fire and Sin City, and suddenly people remembered he can really act. Then comes 2008, and he does The Wrestler. Incredible movie, nails him an Oscar nomination. For a minute, it looks like Mickey Rourke is back again. So Marvel grabs him to play Whiplash in Iron Man 2. You'd think it's all smooth sailing after that, right? Except, not really. Mickey hated the experience. He said Marvel turned Whiplash into some boring, flat villain and cut most of his good scenes. Basically, he said he spent 3 months getting the accent perfect, even went to Russia and everything, and all of it just ended up deleted. Dude straight up said, if they want to make mindless comic book movies, then I don't want to be a part of that. And just like that, the comeback was done. This was supposed to be Meg Ryan's big comeback. She'd been away for 8 years, hadn't done a rom-com since forever, since Kate and Leopold back in 2001. And this wasn't just her acting again, she was directing it too. Pretty big deal, right? Unfortunately, not so much. The movie landed with kind of a thud, barely broke into the top 10 at the box office on its opening weekend, and reviews weren't great either. Seems like people weren't exactly dying for Meg Ryan's big return. Even Meg herself admitted she wasn't sure why she did it. She said directing herself in a rom-com was basically the fastest possible way to get sick of your own face. She literally said, "I don't know why I did it. I honestly can't believe we did it." Not exactly a glowing recommendation. Cameron Diaz had been away from Hollywood since 2014 after that remake of Annie. 10 years later, Netflix convinced her to come back for this action comedy called Back in Action. And the budget was just nuts, $207 million. Seriously, Netflix, what is even happening with these budgets? Movie had a stacked cast too. Jamie Foxx, Glenn Close, Andrew Scott, Kyle Chandler, solid people. Directed by Seth Gordon, the guy behind Horrible Bosses, which was pretty fun. Netflix hyped this thing up, of course. Record-breaking streaming numbers, all that. But the actual movie's not great. Another one of those Netflix blockbusters that feels like it's vanishing from your brain while you're still watching it. Critics said it's less obnoxious than something like Red Notice, but still just a glossy, forgettable way to kill time folding laundry. Diaz deserves better, honestly. Let's hope her next movie, this Jonah Hill black comedy called Outcome, works out a little better. Before The Love Guru, people hadn't seen Mike Myers do live action since like 2003, and even then, it was barely seen stuff like View from the Top. He voiced Shrek and did that weird Cat in the Hat thing, but we hadn't gotten a proper new Mike Myers comedy character, like Austin Powers or Wayne, in forever. And then comes The Love Guru. From the first trailer, you could kind of tell something wasn't right. Myers plays this goofy American guru raised in India who's trying to become the world's #1 love guru. Movie got into hot water immediately. People found it offensive, critics absolutely tore it apart, and worst of all, it just wasn't funny. Like, at all. It ended up winning 3 Golden Raspberries, including Worst Picture. Basically, it pretty much killed Mike Myers' live-action career on the spot.